Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you so much to all of you for submitting questions. We've got a great lineup of questions tonight. We have a lot to cover, and we're excited to do that. We are going to, just so you all are aware, the format tonight, there is a chat function. You do have the ability to send us messages through that chat function. If you go into the chat and you type anything, all the panelists that are here will be able to see that. The attendees won't be able to see it, but the panelists will. We do have a full slate of questions, so we feel like we're going to cover a lot of ground. But if there are things that you want to ask, certainly enter them into the chat room, and I'm going to do my best to watch those as we're going and incorporate those into the question and answer portion of our event tonight. So I wanted to make sure to introduce everyone. I am joined on the panel tonight by Bob Hill, our head of school, Ann Pickrell, our assistant head of school, Greg Talea, our academic dean and all-around good guy, as he asked me to include in his introduction. Kathy Noble, our dean of students, and Jen Fulcher, who's the head of our middle school, but also the head girls varsity soccer coach, as that's going to be some ground that she covers tonight in a few of the questions. So tonight's format, again, we're going to hear from Bob Hill. Bob's got some thoughts that he's going to share with everyone. And then we are going to go into a question and answer period. And again, we've got a lot of questions that you all have submitted, and we're going to try to answer them to the best of our ability. And again, just if folks are popping in, I see some names that are popping in here. The chat function on this webinar does work. So if you wanted to enter any questions in the chat room, you can do that, and they will go to all the panelists, and we will do our best. I'm going to be the MC tonight, and I'm going to do my best to field those questions. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Bob Hill, our head of school.
Thanks, Chris. Hello, everyone. And it's great to spend an evening with you, at least our evening. I'm not sure of what all the time zones are where you are, but we're delighted that you're all here. And we have, we're happy to share all that we have gleaned in the past number of weeks and months, and are eager to do that. And I want to reiterate Chris's comment about thanking you for some fantastic questions that have prompted us in this webinar tonight. I also want to make sure to say that as always, all of us here are thinking about all of you there during this really difficult period of time for families and for individuals and for schools and countries. And I appreciate that uncertainty that everyone's going through. I want to talk a little bit about this. You know, here we are, and we had graduation of the class of 2020 on Saturday. Some of you may have been able to see the ceremony that we did. It was a wonderful, wonderful way to celebrate those folks, even though they weren't here. And actually, a bunch of kids and families came around in cars today on the loop and got one last lap of the campus. That was a lot of fun too. I'm sad to say I missed that, but I hear it went very well. 2020 did a remarkable job in my estimation. I've been the head of school for 10 years. They did a remarkable job really showing their resilience and their courage and their fortitude, as I think all of your children have as well, in pushing through and in doing their very best in the virtual classroom world that we occupied. I'm careful to talk about what we're doing in the fall as not reopening, because we've been open all along, but it has to do with the return back to school and having people come back to Williston. And I'm going to share some ideas about that as we go along here. All of you have been handling uncertainty, and I think uncertainty is really at the core of the challenges that all of us have faced. I'm a parent of a college age first-year student who came home from college as well, so I got to live firsthand and see what that was like also. And so, you know, my point is that in this time of uncertainty, what we need more than ever is stability. And it's my firm conviction that Williston provides the kind of stability and continuity that we all need. And so I want to spend some time talking about what we've learned so far about the repopulating of students here in the fall. We are absolutely confident and convicted in our intention to have students return in the fall. We have not yet ironed out all of those details. And what I anticipate is that by the middle to the second half of June, I will be able to send the kind of updates that gives you a little more specificity that you might crave, and I understand that. But as for now, we are absolutely determined to bring students back and start school as we have done for 179 years, no question, but that it will be a little bit different, and then I'll address some of those differences as well. But so excited to think about what the school will look like with all of you back here and with all the new families as well. If you're like all of us who have children in college or school, I'm quite sure that you're wondering about what ifs and what if one thing happens, then what do we do? In other words, do I have a plan A or a plan B or a plan C? As far as I'm concerned, Williston is certainly my plan A for everybody, and I hope it's your plan A as well. And again, going back to what I said about the need for stability and continuity and a return to normal as best we can, I think that's critical. I have a slide I want to share because what many of the people on this panel tonight have been doing for days and weeks and really 7 days a week is I've broken down the senior leadership team of the school into working groups that are really answering the granular questions of what does it look like when we return. And I can show you what that looks like here with a slide that shows you who these teams are. Without embarrassing myself or any of my friends here, we literally have hundreds of years of experience in working at schools and in handling some of these conundrums that we're all facing. I will also say that given our location here in the Pioneer Valley, but also given my contacts, which are both local and national, we've had expert advice from around the country. What you can see on the screen that was just shared is I have 5 working teams. Obviously, students and safety, which is a #1 concern of mine and the Board of Trustees. The safe return of students and faculty and staff and the maintaining of safety here is absolutely critical. What does academics look like in the new normal as we get to that? How are athletics going to evolve? What is the operations of the school looking like? And then how do we maintain accurate and transparent communication with everybody? So I have these 5 working teams. We've been at it since May 1st, digging deep, taking deep dives into the questions of those various areas. It's critical to all of us here that as we do bring students back, we do so in the safest way to ensure the greatest chance of success in this COVID-19 environment that we have. We have a lot of information. We've got a lot of practices already to go for the reopening. And then there's some things that we'll continue to work on. And as I say, by mid-June, I'm certainly going to be able to dig deeper in that, provide more detail for you as I have that. I have another slide that I'd like to share, which is showing some of the topics that we're really working on right now. One thing that we do know, and I can announce, is that when the school does return in person, we will also maintain what I call a bimodal instructional method. So we will be able to deliver, as we have this past term, our education in the virtual realm, in the virtual classroom, if you will, because we expect that there will be folks who are unable to get here. And we want to be able to take care of all of our students. So that's critical, and I really want everyone to know that. In terms of how we bring students back, in all likelihood, there will be a staggered reopening. I will speak to that a little bit more later. But the idea, and one of the key considerations, you've probably heard this about colleges and universities, is social distancing and doing everything one can do to limit the density of spaces on campus. So that will certainly have an effect on dining, and it will have an effect on some of how we run our dormitory life, and it will certainly have an effect on how we what spaces we choose for our classes. And some of those considerations will certainly spill over into the daily schedule, perhaps, or the calendar. So those are some of the items and key details that we're working on right now. I think that it's critical for everybody on this call to know how determined I am and we are as a school to bring students back. This is not some dream. This is a plan, and I will turn over here to Chris Dietrich in a moment, because I want my colleagues to share with you some of the work that they're doing and answers to some of the questions that you've given us. There will be 4 components that I think everyone needs to know about that really have not changed. I've been a deep reader and of all of the information coming out, and as I say, I feel fortunate that I've had access to national experts both in the health world and in the academic sphere to inform some of what I'm sharing with you. But social distancing, 6 feet of distance, is certainly going to be prevalent really in the new normal world that we occupy. Wearing masks will also be critical. So it's distancing, it's masking, it's deep cleaning both of physical spaces and washing hands constantly. And then finally, if there is a need to track and trace any sick individual, we're going to have the ability to do that as well. And so I just want to reassure everybody on this call of all the steps that we are planning to take and will certainly take to ensure the safe and happy repopulation, as we like to call it, of the school come the fall. And with that, I think I'll turn it back to Chris Dietrich, and he can share questions that you've had with others on the panel. So Chris, back to you.
All right. Thank you, Bob. Thank you very much. So we are going to, as I said, we're going to answer a lot of the questions that you all have written in. As you can imagine, a good portion of what we're going to talk about is going to be somewhat redundant. Bob obviously went over some important big details, and we're going to add, I think, a little bit of detail to some of those topics. And again, I hope that as we go through things, we're going to be able to answer your questions. Again, just for those who've joined late, if you do have questions during this, we are going to cover a lot of ground, and we've got a lot of questions. But if there are things that you want us to ask, you can type them into the chat room. So I know a couple people have raised their hands. We're not going to be calling on people, but if they want to type something into the chat room, you can do that, and then we will all that, and we will do our best to answer those throughout. But we do have a lot to cover right now as well. So the first question I'm gonna hand to my friend Jen Fulcher. Jen, one of the folks asked, how will we handle the dining commons and food distribution until a vaccine is developed?
Oh, great question, friends. I love talking about a great meal with Sage. So like all schools, we'll be changing how food is served. No self-service, multiple dining locations on campus, and more. We feel really good that we have a plan to provide a safe, healthy, and always delicious food experience for our community.
All right. I'm just going to reiterate a couple of those things, Jen. It was a little bit harder I think, for folks to hear. So I'm just going to touch on a couple of those things that Jen noted. So we are looking at obviously a lot of different things with the dining commons. We're investigating a lot of different scenarios, including staggering meal times, including grab and go options that we're going to look into. We are not going to be having self-service in the dining commons next year, and we're going to be looking at multiple dining locations. We won't just be eating in the dining commons. We're going to be serving food in different areas, and we're investigating that. There's actually one of those Bob had mentioned, spending quite a bit of time on that topic. So I think those were the major pieces that Jen was going to be talking about that she covered there. So so for the next question, I'm gonna ask my good friend Kathy Noble to take this one. Kathy, one of the parents asked, what procedures are you putting into place for cleaning and sanitizing classrooms, dorm rooms, bathrooms, and common spaces?
Thanks, Chris. As you know, I want to reiterate the student safety and cleanliness is of our utmost concern. And we have been monitoring the CDC guidelines and will continue to do so, in addition to following best practices to residential living. To that end, we've already purchased 4 large canisters for sanitizing for backpack units and another large sanitizing unit for large spaces such as the gymnasium and the dining commons. We have committed to doing stringent cleaning and increasing the workload of our physical plant department in that area. We will have we anticipate that our bathrooms, classrooms, dormitory rooms will be cleaned on a continuing basis during the day, multiple times. And we're committed to that as well. Part of the cleaning, of course, is making sure soap dispensers are full. We're increasing our capacity for hand sanitizers. They'll be in every building, and they'll be in close proximity to students. We will continue to follow best practices and invest in sanitizing and cleaning equipment so we can clean and disinfect all frequently touched areas and shared objects between users, as well as take steps to ensure that we have ample supplies to supply healthy hygiene. So we'll have masks, hand sanitizer stations, and everyday cleaning products. I want to reassure you that we've been working with our connections to the local medical community, working with doctors at our closest hospitals, and making sure we have the proper protocols to be able to move in that direction. We're very fortunate that in our part of Western Mass, we have had low numbers of the pandemic, and so our hospitals have availability and space.
All right, thank you, Kathy. For the next question, I'm gonna go to my friend Greg Tulea, the all-around good guy, on this one. And Greg, one of the parents asked, will classes be held in person? Will you have the ability to go back to online learning if a student becomes sick during the year?
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Chris. The answer is yes. By all means, our determined effort will be to prepare, and all our preparations and goal is to open school on campus in person. We miss your kids and we want to see them back on campus, and all of our designs are leading to that end. We did learn this spring that we can pull off a really good remote learning program. There were apprehensions about starting that up when we were forced to do it, but both the faculty and the students rose to the occasion, and we were very, very successful at producing that program and keeping it going for these last 8 weeks. So we know how to do it now, and when the time comes when we have to institute it, either for a single student or a group of students, we'll be able to do it. Some students are likely to get sick. If that bad event happens, we'll be able to deal with that in a remote learning program for them. Some students might not be able to get to campus on time. Some students might go into quarantine. So we're going to be ready for all of those options and have a backup remote program ready to go.
All right, thank you, Greg. So for the next question, we're going to there were a lot, I know a lot of you have this is at the forefront of everyone's mind. In fact, a couple of folks, we've grouped a number of these questions together. A couple of folks referred to these as the unanswerable questions. So naturally, we're going to give those to Bob Hill. Generally speaking, what folks asked about is, what are the discussions around doing frequent testing for students and staff? Will domestic and international boarding students need to be quarantined for 2 weeks in September when they get to campus? And then what will be our approach to testing before students being allowed to join campus again, and then testing throughout the year? So, so Bob, if you want to touch on all those, I guess, at once.
I'll take my best shot, Chris. If I forget something, just
I'll bring it back.
Hit the side of my my Hollywood square here, and I'll come back to it. Without false pride here or sarcasm, I do feel as I'm becoming something of a lay expert on some of these questions, and I'm not sure that's a great thing, or maybe it is given where we all are. Testing is a fascinating topic right now, and if you're reading the journals and hearing from the medical experts, then you know that we don't really have a fixed handle on it, both in terms of its availability, but also its accuracy. So we will do whatever the state of Massachusetts and the governor's mandates, as well as CDC and other health experts suggest that we need to do in terms of testing. I can absolutely imagine the question about the quarantining. Right now and in the past few weeks, we've all been safely in our homes. And so we're all pretty convinced that we're healthy people right now. And the question is, how do you repopulate school from where we are now to where we expect to be in the fall? My sense is, and right now my thinking would be, that really everybody, all faculty, all staff, all families, arrive at Williston having had essentially what we've been doing, 2 weeks of maybe not stay at home, but what I think the governor of Massachusetts has referred to as safer at home. So really doing vigilance and due diligence to make sure that when you arrive on campus, that we're all set to go and that we're convinced, and as we can be, of our own health. There perhaps will be families for whom that may be a challenge given travel, and we're gonna work with them individually as well to make sure that we can have sort of that 2-week period that seems to be so important before you recongregate with people. I'm thinking I forgot something of that list of questions that Chris had. So I did a little bit of the testing, I did a little bit of the self-quarantining. What else was there, Chris? Was that pretty much it?
I think several people, Bob, have asked, and I know we've talked about this a lot, about the frequency of testing, and even I'll add to it, I guess, just looking at some of the folks as they're writing in.
Yeah.
Folks are wondering about, again, many of them reiterating the fact that they know we don't have a fully formed plan at this point, but
right.
what is going to be the frequency of testing? I guess we could throw in the idea of are day students going to be tested on a daily basis? That was one of the questions. So.
Right. So I can imagine. I've actually spoken to some national leaders in this area, both in terms of Fortune 500 companies or medical experts, CDC folks. If you just even think about what happened at the White House, where one day somebody was tested and the next day they had COVID-19, we understand that there's an inherent there's plenty of gray in the testing protocol as it exists right now. What we believe will be the safest protocol will be to have the kind of testing, and we're exploring where that testing will come from, and I'm sure we'll have it if we need to, but to use the kind of testing that one needs to do when there's tracking and tracing going on. And so I think you'll be hearing a lot more from me in specific terms about what that would look like. Day students, yeah, they come back every day to campus. It might be that we ask for a temperature test on day students. More likely, what my hope will be is that there's a Williston compact that we all abide by, and that has to do with being as safe as possible when you're not on campus, and certainly we'll probably have our own restrictions about where our boarding students go, because you want to limit as much as you can interactions on and off the campus.
Perfect. Thank you, Bob. Yeah,
sure.
I think that touches on a lot of what folks have asked, but also what folks are writing in now too. So
great. Okay, good.
Thank you. All right. So Jen Fulcher is back with us. So we're going to try this, and I'll be ready to help if need be. But Jen, another question which I know you've spent a lot of time working on in your group with Mark too. Many folks have asked, even some folks are asking now, what is our plan at this point, and what is our current thinking with regard to sports in the fall? Oh, you're on mute, Jen.
Here we
Am
go.
I coming in clearly now?
Yeah, that sounds good, Jen.
I love improvement. I love improvement. Hello. Thanks for that. That's a really, really great question. And this question is really an important part of our planning. As we know, it's important to many families, and it's very important to us. We would love to have in-person competitive sports in the fall. But as with all schools, we still need more information to be able to make a final plan. At this time, we're talking with almost daily with peer schools and athletic directors from numerous conferences, including at the college level, NESCAC ADs and Ivy level and Ivy League ADs, as we look to develop the best and safest plan to return to competition. We do know, and we're already planning for a robust on-campus program that includes skills training, strength training, speed and agility training, and the ability to showcase our athletes for college opportunities. Like all schools, we're looking at numerous scenarios like shifting the times of the seasons, open up facilities early, keeping it open during breaks to provide the most and the safest opportunities for all of our student athletes. Obviously, we cannot decide about games in a vacuum, but I can say that if peer schools are playing we will be playing too. I think we all know a lot. We will know a lot more as colleges start to make decisions in NEPSAC in mid to late June. And we look forward to creating a plan to best serve and support our student athletes. I want to also add that we're putting together a plan to use multiple spaces in a schedule rotation to safely have our students participate in dance and theater and art and robotics and music. And we know that our program, our full program, is important to our families, and it's extremely important to us as we educate the whole child. So we're finalizing our plans to offer our program in a safe environment for all our kids.
All right. Thank you very much, Jen.
Nice to hear you, Jen. I'm sorry you didn't get to talk about food.
Foods was my favorite question, Bob.
And the good news is I got to handle it, Jen, and I obviously like food more than other people as well. So perfect. So the next question, I'm going to begin an answer to this question, but other panelists feel free to jump in if I miss anything. But a couple folks have asked this: how are we going to handle dorm rooms and boarding? Specifically, can my child have a single for added safety? And then some folks have actually asked, is it still going to be okay to have a double, because I'm intrigued by that and I want my student with another student. So it's obviously a very important topic on a lot of people's minds. We are doing a lot of work what we're really doing, the work that we're doing now is looking at our campus layout and trying to create an environment where we can minimize population density in the buildings as much as we can. So we know we are actually you all know this campus well, and you know the progress we've been making in the last couple of years. We're at a tremendously advantageous situation with regard to student rooming, with regard to the spacing that we have. Obviously, everyone knows that in fall 2018, we opened up John Hayes and White Dorm. We are still very much on schedule to open up Emily McFadden Vincent House on the residential quad in September. That creates 80 new spaces on campus in 2 years. Obviously, those are replacing other dorms that are still very viable options. They are dorms that we ultimately hope to take offline and do other things with, but we are actually really well positioned with regard to coming up with a plan to minimize population density in dorms for at least next year. So the original plan was to open the school year this year with 7 dorms. We now know that we are going to be utilizing 10 of those spaces, 10 dorms. So Sawyer, right now the thinking is Sawyer, Conant, and Hathaway are going to be dorm spaces. And I know a lot of you have been notified of that. So we do feel like we are in a good position with regard to the ability to minimize population density in dorms. We obviously want to work closely with you, those who've worked on your roommate forms already and submitted feedback. Obviously, those of you who know that Dave Korakowski is the first point of contact there, and he's gathered a lot of information. So if you have boarding families, if you have feelings one way or the other, obviously we want to hear those. We're amidst planning where folks are going to be, and we're going to start to get into the planning very soon of who's going to be living where. So we want to work with you. We want to know what your thoughts are, and with the spaces that we have, we do feel really good about the fact that we're going to be able to satisfy the vast majority of requests. It may require some different things as far as where student groups are in different places, but we're really focusing our attention on trying to satisfy families' desires to either be in a single or to be in a double. And we believe we're going to have the capacity to do that. So.
Hey, Chris, can I just jump in real quickly there? I mean, I'm not sure. We have, over 100 people on this call. It's great. And I don't know how many of you are really kind of junkies for more and more information, but if you are, the Connecticut plan that came out about 3 or 4 weeks ago now, I lose track of time, was the first in the nation. And it was a commissioned committee by the governor of Connecticut, and it was led by the former president of Yale University. And it's online, so you can Google that. And the reason I'm jumping in is because it was quite interesting there that plan, which talks about the repopulation of schools and boarding schools and colleges and universities in Connecticut, had no problem with doubles. In fact, they had no problem with suites of students. And really the notion is that you treat either suites of students or doubles as family units. And I would imagine that Williston will be able to share some ideas along those lines as well. But it may allay some of the questions for folks who wonder if doubles are safe. This seminal report from Connecticut certainly came out front and led the nation, and others have adopted that same stance, saying, we're not really so concerned about doubles or even larger suites. So I thought I'd just offer that bit of information.
Perfect. Thank you, Bob. Okay. Well, heading into a next question, I'm going to ask my friend Ann Pickerel this one. So, Ann, will students be able to come early to campus and stay on campus during breaks with faculty supervision? And also, what will happen if an international student happens to test positive during the school year? What is our plan there? So.
Thanks, Chris. Those are three really important questions. First of all, let me just say I'm pleased to see so many people from around the world joining us and across the country tonight and this morning where you all are. So welcome everyone. As Bob Hill mentioned, we are formulating a plan for the repopulation of the school, and we will work individually with international students to ensure your safe return. That's very important to us, and we want to make sure that safety is the #1 priority, and we'll be ready to handle that. The school has made the decision that for any international and domestic students on all of the breaks throughout the year, the campus will stay open, so students will be able to minimize the number of trips they need to make home if great distance is involved. So on all the long weekends, the Thanksgiving break, the winter break, the spring break, the campus will remain open for people who it is determined that it's unsafe to travel home during that time. As many of you know, we did have a dozen students that ended up staying with us during this March break for most of the break, and the majority of our Williston students are safely home now. Some are still here in the States. We're unable to go home, but our first priority is for student safety and safe travel. So again, we will work with you individually on those. And there will definitely be faculty supervision during that time. If a student does international domestic from a great distance, does test positive during the school year, we will have two quarantine locations set up on campus, sponsored and monitored by our health and wellness. As Kathy Noble mentioned, we're very close to two excellent hospitals, so the medical care will be there. In all cases, we will be communicating with parents and guardians directly. Our campus is set up so that if students are ill, whether it's a regular illness or another illness related to COVID, and they're able to continue in quarantine with classes, they'll be able to do that seamlessly as they have done this spring. But again, we want you to be reassured that health and wellness, as well as the local medical community, will be available. And the health and safety of the entire community, faculty, staff, students, is our #1 priority. Some of you may end up having questions about visa issues. If you do, please reach out directly to us at the school. We'll be happy to help you with those. I know that embassies have begun to reopen in most countries. So again, we do not anticipate any difficulties. CVIS has made accommodations for students who have not been able to go home. So if you have any particular questions about any of that, please be in touch with the school.
All right, thank you, Ann. So I'm going to go back to Bob for this next one. And Bob, I'm going to kind of blend this, I think, a little bit with, there's a number of folks have chimed in about this as well. But just the question was, will you be changing the academic calendar in any way? But just to kind of address some of the things that have come in from some of the attendees, folks have mentioned that they've heard about some other schools that have rolled out plans with modified trimester programs or the possibility of early starts, so there would be an earlier release and a longer break. So I'm not sure if you want to fold those all in, but I know a couple of those seem to be the questions. One person asked, how many courses will a student take in the fall trimester? Will that be different? So I know that that's a lot of ground to cover, but maybe your thoughts on that topic.
Yeah, again, we're talking and thinking and pondering all of the same kinds of things that you've probably read about that colleges have considered or in a couple of cases, some schools have perhaps beaten us to the punch in mailing something more definitive to parents. What I imagine is a normal start to the school year, a normal number of classes. What I do envision are any opportunities we have to eliminate breaks in the fall, we'll likely do. We don't want students to leave en masse and come back en masse. And we're looking very closely at that period of time between Thanksgiving, the Thanksgiving break, and then the new year. I suspect that we will fall in line with colleges that have made that decision. But again, I haven't put that in writing yet. So those kinds of changes those are great questions to ask, and they are the kind of changes that I think all schools will be looking at very closely. The critical piece here is to control the environment as much as we can, to limit the number of mass movements of students or faculty away and back to school, and that's what we'll do. And again, it's all done with the safety of everyone in mind. I was asked the other day about faculty and will faculty be are all faculty confident that they're comfortable teaching? You know, we're going to look carefully at that as well. I think that we're going to be able to solve with space issues some of these concerns. So please don't be surprised if you see small classes next year in big spaces, and I think that's okay. So anyway, back to Chris, and if these other questions come up, I guess I was going to say at the end of my remarks, and I will repeat, please reach out to any of us and we'll flesh out any of these concerns that you might have. So all good questions.
Yeah. Thank you, Bob. Yeah. And I hope, and just to speak to the whole group, we do still have a number of questions as well. And Bob has some more that he's going to be sharing as well. So we're going to, as I am reading all of your questions, and I'm going to try to incorporate them, but many of them I know are going to be folded into some of the other topics as well. So I'm going to go to my friend Greg Talea for the next one. And it's a somewhat related question, but will we be modifying classroom spaces and altering classroom locations to maintain social distancing?
The answer to that is yes. We're well along on the process of identifying alternate spaces. Your kids will tell you that we have nice classrooms on campus, but not many of them are set up for 6-foot social distancing of a class of 12 or 14. So we are looking at larger spaces on campus that are typically not used to house classes, but will have to be next year. The Dodge Room in the Reed Center, for example, some of the common rooms in the new dorms, the theater, the main floor of the chapel. We're looking at all the big spaces that we can find and outfitting them electronically so that we can conduct our classes the way we have been used to conducting them. But that will definitely be a change. The safety distance of 6 feet is something that we're very, very serious about, and we're going to have to find a way to make that happen next year. And that means moving some classrooms. We do expect students and teachers to be wearing masks. I think that's probably something that we're going to be seeing. We're also looking at expanding the lunch periods to stagger that a bit more. And again, it's all about keeping the students safe in the new environment. We are looking at an increased passing time as well. It's likely that students will take a little bit longer to get from place to place because they'll be asked to be doing it more thoughtfully and carefully. And also we're going to need time in between classes for cleaning. So there are going to be some changes in the way the academic day is set up. But again, it's just going to be geared toward student safety.
All right. Thank you, Greg. The next question, and this was asked in a number of different ways, and I'll start with this one. Folks have asked, are we going to be closing down the campus to outside visitors? And obviously, you know, it's a great question. We are looking at basically taking great lengths to make sure that we are minimizing the number of visitors that come to the campus. So we already know that this summer our facilities are not being rented to. I mean, at this point they're not able to be rented, but when they are, we're going to be really minimalizing the number of outside folks that are coming into the Williston campus. So our facilities, which oftentimes are rented out by outside programs in the fall and the winter, that's not going to happen. We're going to be really focusing our attention on utilizing all of our facilities for Williston students and Williston faculty members and Williston activities. So we are going to be doing our best to limit those things. We are going to, as we've noted a number of different times, we're going to be following state and CDC regulations as far as, or recommendations as far as what the best practices are going to be. And we're going to be looking at things like, for, just thinking about my own area. Obviously the admission office is a group that brings in a lot of visitors on an annual basis, and we are already planning for doing a lot more with prospective families in a virtual realm, and limiting the number of visitors that are coming to campus. And if folks are going to be coming to campus, we're going to be doing it in a very safe and very limited way. It may be very minimal, and when we get to that point where we feel like we can make safe decisions. But everything that we're going to be doing with regard to our policies on visitors visiting the campus is going to be to protect the safety of our students and our faculty, to minimize the amount of contact that we are having on this campus when folks are here from folks from the outside. I don't know, Bob, I'm not sure if you want to touch on this, but I'm thinking about this topic with regard to some of the folks that have been writing in too. And I think some parents are asking about, and I know these are questions that we can't fully answer quite yet, but some folks are asking about visits to the campus to see their own children, or over breaks, if their children are here, how are they gonna be able to come to visit their kids? I'm not sure if you want to touch on that now, but I thought it relates to the visiting piece, and I just want to make sure that they have clarity on what we're thinking on that one.
Yeah, that's also a good question. I mean, as again, as a consumer of a daily consumer of all the expert advice I can get in the news, it really does seem that social distancing and mask wearing are the keys to knocking down this pandemic and to getting the R value, which is a transmission, below 1. I could imagine if I had to go visit my son at college, it would be fine if I maintained those same policies, so those same protocols, that I had a mask, that I was 6 feet away, and people would be, I think, embracing of those steps that I would take. The notion is that anybody who comes to campus should come to campus symptom-free, knowing that for the past 2 weeks they haven't been in spaces that would unduly expose them. So airports are always a risk, things like that. But I do believe, and this seems to be the consistent drumbeat from the CDC, from the World Health Organization, that social distancing and mask wearing are really the critical elements of getting back to interactions in person.
Great, thank you, Bob. Yeah, and I hope that I know folks we're trying to be as clear as we can, and so obviously we know that that with minimal travel, with folks that are driving in cars to their homes, those are things that we're not going to be fully restricting by any means, but just we're going to be putting in parameters that are going to keep everybody safe, and just hoping that everybody follows our protocols and make sure that we're minimalizing, that we're following the pieces that Bob already alluded to. So for the next question, I'm going to pass this one to my friend Ann Pickrell. And a couple folks have asked if travel is restricted, and someone noted that in their country there are still no commercial flights out yet. Will boarding students be offered the ability to take online schooling or defer admission until they can get to Williston? So give that one to Ann Pickrell.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Williston will be ready to welcome your children into campus whenever it is safe for them to arrive from their home countries, whether that's in September, November, or later on in the academic year. And as Bob alluded to earlier, we will be offering and having bimodal capabilities of online classes. So if a student is not able to arrive safely, they will certainly be able to continue on with classes. But our plan is to welcome people in person in the fall. Our calendar will be determined as soon as we can, mid-June to late June, so that families can make travel arrangements. And again, we want to work individually to make sure that your son or daughter's return is a safe one to campus. And if a student needs to leave campus during the year for any particular reason, health or unhealth related, they will be able to continue on with their classes remotely. And I think the students have done a remarkable job, as well as the faculty this spring, given the time differences for the synchronous classes and the asynchronous classes. So we are really ready to deal with that and to work with students. But we look forward to welcoming people back to campus. We've definitely missed all the students this spring.
All right. Thank you, Ann. And for the next question, I'm going to go to Greg Talea with this one as well. Greg, a couple folks have asked about this too. What are Williston's plans, or do we have any plans with regard to offering any online summer classes or opportunities this summer? I think you're still muted, Greg.
That's better, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sorry. We are going to offer an online program this summer. It's a 4-week program. It starts on July 14th and goes for 4 weeks through August 7th. It'll be set up to have 2 synchronous live sessions per week of an hour long each, so a total of 8 hours. A lot of the program will be elective courses that we think our students will take advantage of. There's also some courses offered to students who want to preview or review courses that build on one another. If you think you're not quite prepared for Spanish 2 and want a little preview of our Spanish 2, you can do that. These are all taught by our own teachers. We're suspecting that our own students will not need any kind of remedial or fill-in work over the summer in order to go from one level to the next. So we expect that most of the students, Williston students, are going to take advantage of this on the elective side. So there's writing courses, there's a drawing course, there's literature, there's a genetics course, there's a wide range of electives. And that program will start on July 14th. I believe that things will be publicized next week so that families will be able to register.
Terrific. Thank you, Greg. I'm gonna field the next one. I actually had a long conversation today with Andrew Shelfo, our Chief Information Officer. So we learned a lot about this. So several folks have asked and wrote in questions about surface returns, the return of the surfaces to school. So I just wanted to kind of clarify a couple different things. So what Andrew told me is basically much like all the other answers to our questions, we want to work with you and we want to create a solution that works best for you. So we're trying to create a system that can allow the return of the surfaces to campus. A couple folks asked specific questions though, knowing that because of the alterations to the AP calendar, some Williston students are still working and preparing to take APs again. If they need to keep their surfaces, obviously we want them to keep those. If that's going to help them to prepare for those, we want them to stay in their hands for that. Some folks who've already heard about the summer online class opportunities have asked about utilizing their surface for those. What Andrew asked me to do is just ask anyone that's in that position where they're considering the idea of using their surface for other purposes this summer, for online classes or different things like that, to just contact the tech office here and to communicate with them. He also wanted me to make sure that I clarified the fact that it seemed like there might have been a little bit of confusion with regard to shipping, knowing that the costs might be a little bit high for folks. The shipping cost for the surface is something that Williston is going to cover for everyone. So he wanted me to make sure, again, that folks who were confused about that, just contact our tech office, and what they will do is they will get mailing addresses. They'll get the packets out to you, the prepaid shipping, so that you can get them back to us. And in fact, we do before that. It seems I guess somewhat odd to some folks that the need to bring them back before students get back in September, but we do as part of our program with Microsoft, we do have to have the machines be looked at and assessed and kind of prepared for the year. So it is important to get those back to us at some point. But again, if that's proving difficult in any way, Andrew Shelfo wanted me to say that you can just contact the tech office and we're going to work with you individually to make it work as best we can. So another question a couple folks have asked about particularly with rising seniors and college counseling program, knowing that they've worked with college counseling already. Many folks have chimed in about the fact that they know that their students are meeting with their college counselors, but wanted to know if there's going to be any extra support given the uncertain nature and the different things. So I'm going to pass that question to Bob Hill again. So Bob.
Thanks, Chris. I still keep a foot in the college counseling office. I was a director of college counseling at 2 different schools. and find it to be a fascinating field. The one thing I would quickly acknowledge is that I'm sure that your families of juniors particularly are feeling, again, this uncertainty and what does it mean for us going through the process. I have spoken to deans of admissions about just that topic, and I want to reassure you from their side of things that you're likely to find the most sympathetic and empathetic college admissions officers in the century coming up through the process next year. They will do everything they can to work with the juniors and try to overcome some of the losses they've had without being able to go visit colleges in last March or this summer. Our college counseling team is second to none. And we have years of experience that covers all areas of college counseling. 2 of our college counselors came from the college side. 2 are very familiar with the athletic component of college counseling. So I feel absolutely confident in what they're doing. I urge parents to check your emails, because this year, more than ever, our college counselors are copying all the parents into the student emails. It's sort of a level of collaboration that we have not assumed would take place before. But this year, given the differences that have gone on, all these emails you will be copied on as parents. Part of the college process, I always used to say, was a little bit of separation and individuation. Coming into adulthood, we want our students to really take ownership of that process. Mom and dads have often been through this process before. So we want the students to really take ownership. That said, we're copying parents and guardians on this. So please be on the lookout for that. And I think they'll be well served by our incredible staff in the College Counseling Office.
All right. Thank you, Bob. And so I know, Bob, I think you and I are going to, I'll tackle one of the questions too. I want to address a lot of folks. You've been great. Again, a lot of folks submitted questions ahead of time. A lot of folks are coming in with some very, very specific questions that we don't fully have answers to yet. So asking about a number of different really specific things. What I guess I want to stress to everybody, and I know Bob would do the same, is that we're communicating with you what we know tonight. We're giving you as much detail as we can, and Bob obviously has more to say here. But some of the very specific questions regarding very specific policies and things like that, we are still working on those right now. So we're trying to give you as detailed a look as we can right now. So I don't want to ignore questions. We are seeing them, but some of them are very, very specific, and they're going to be a little bit more difficult to answer. So I guess what I would just want to reiterate is that we're going to be communicating with you far more this summer than we usually do in the summertime, to make sure that you're as clear and up to date with what we're thinking and what we're planning for the fall. So I want to make sure everyone doesn't feel like we're skipping their questions, but some of them are very specific, and frankly, we don't have answers to those yet because we haven't come up with our full policy with certain things like that. So just wanted to make sure that I wanted to make sure that folks knew we weren't trying to skip their questions. We just we're gonna come with as much communication as we can. So Bob, a question that I think we could both kind of answer in somewhat in tandem is a couple of folks asked about this, very specifically asked to candidly know what are enrollment numbers like, and what is our prognosis with regard to what is our best information about the economic health of the school. And I guess I'll let you handle that part, but I'll start with the enrollment numbers. I guess they're hand in hand, but so just so you all know, and I guess I want to take this opportunity to thank a lot of you for helping us during the yield process. It was a very different year. We sent out acceptances on March 10th, and that was right as we were making decisions to go online for the third trimester. So I just want to let everyone in this group know, and again, thank you to those that helped us with a lot of those events that we did virtually, but we actually had a very strong yield this year, given the circumstances. So the new students that were accepted, we had a great group that we accepted, and we've had a strong yield with many students who've already committed to coming to Williston in early April. Obviously, given the circumstances unfolding, some of those folks are still waiting to decide what they're going to do. To be very frank with all of you, it's a smaller number than I assumed it would be at this moment. If you asked me this on March 10th, what was going to happen, I would assume that there were going to be a lot of folks that were still waiting to decide at this point. Right now, there are a lot of folks that have committed to Williston, and they, like you, are just waiting to hear the details about what's going to unfold for the fall. So I would say from an enrollment perspective right now, what we're looking at is a really strong and robust group of new students coming in, with, again, a few folks who are just kind of waiting to see how things are going to go. And it is, in many ways, it goes country by country. There are folks that in their home countries are experiencing different kinds of trends with this and what they're hearing. We're doing our best to communicate with all of them to make it really clear to them what's happening here on the ground, in not just in the United States, but in East Hampton, Massachusetts, and how that's going to guide our thinking. So so I would say that from an enrollment perspective, things are very strong. We had a very similar call to this last night with new families, new Williston families, and we had very similar attendance. We had approximately 120 folks that came onto that, and heard some good feedback from them afterwards as well too. So so we're feeling really great about the newly enrolled students and the numbers there too. So
I'll jump in, Chris, on the financial piece. And you know, that's a very good question. I completely understand why it's being asked. I've been here for 10 years. The last 5 years, Williston has raised more dollars in the last 5 years, more millions of dollars in the last 5 years than any time in the history of the school. The residential quad is certainly, I think, demonstrable evidence of that. I'm sure folks know that we do not have the massive endowment that some of our peer schools who we overlap with in admissions might have. In the college side, this might be equated to the difference between Tufts University and Harvard University. That said, we're a lean operation that runs very smartly, and we plan for the future. So back in the economic downturn of 2008, we planned for such a case as this that might come along. And so with the full backing of the Board of Trustees, I have no concerns about the financial stability of Williston. Does that mean there won't be a little bit of belt tightening? I think there will be some belt tightening. It won't affect the student experience at all. But I think all schools are doing that. One of the things I would urge people to differentiate among, you know, there are these massive headlines that we see in the major media and newspapers, and when you see something like Johns Hopkins University talking about a $350 million budget deficit, I can understand why folks might say, hey, private schools look like private colleges and universities. We're quite different in how we operate, how our budgets operate. So the financial stability of the school is assured. I see this as a 1 year, sort of belt tightening exercise, most in the worst case scenario for the school. And then we get our vaccination sometime, hopefully in 2021, and life goes on. So quite a different situation than the massive economic downturn of 2008, 2009. But a good question. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Bob. Well, I think we are fast approaching 9 o'clock here, Bob, too. And I know we were trying to make sure we weren't keeping folks for too much more than an hour. So I think we've covered all the questions that we can answer at this point. And again, I want to just reiterate the fact that we are going to be continuing to communicate with you. So again, some of the specific questions that we can't answer right now, as we get more specific throughout June and July, we're going to continue to communicate. We will very likely do another one of these as well at some point in the near future, so that we can keep you informed about what's going on. But I know, Bob, you had some things you wanted to close with too. So
yeah, I mean, just to reassure folks, I mean, I apologize if my answers have seemed maybe not as on point as they might otherwise. You're catching me between two pretty important calls that I'll be having. Yesterday, I was on the phone with, or it was actually a Zoom call, and I was with the head of Deerfield Academy, the head of Northfield Mount Hermon, the mayor of East Hampton, and the president of WPI. The president of WPI is leading the state's task force on repopulating of schools. So we had the #1 voice on that blue ribbon panel speaking to us, a handful of school heads. That was wonderful to hear directly from her. And as I said, the mayor of East Hampton also was on that commission by Governor Baker of Massachusetts. So I got to hear from the people really doing the heavy lifting and the deep detailed work about what it means. The head of WPI, the president of WPI, she said something that was really quite music to my ears. She said, when the plan comes out, and I hope I'm not spilling the beans here, but when the Massachusetts plan comes out, it will not be one size fits all. So schools will have quite a bit of latitude on how we respond and how we repopulate. That's really important. And if that is in fact the case, and we're waiting for this report to come out, Williston will be in great shape because we're not the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. We're not Amherst College. We have different landscapes. We have different populations. We're on an order of magnitude that's so different that it makes our task much easier. The Dean of Faculty at Middlebury College and I are college friends. I speak to him a couple of times a week. I understand what they're wrestling with up there. I'm on a call once a week with about 15 heads of school. I know that we're all really pretty much on the same page in our thinking. And then this coming Friday, our board chair, John Hazen White, he's a member of the Brookings Institution in Washington, D.C., and he's arranged a private call between John and I will be on the call with the Brookings Institution in DC in charge of their education sector. And you know, I'm not saying this to say that I have access and can pick up the phone and get the president, but I do have a lot of confidence in the advice that I'm getting and the sounding boards that I'm getting. I should also say that our Board of Trustees is meeting bi-weekly for updates from the school, from our senior admin team on how we're progressing towards this goal of having students return safely in the fall and maintaining that safety and that health throughout the beginning of the process, which is probably the hardest part, right? The transition we expect will be the most challenging part for any institution. So again, I have a lot of confidence in that. You know, as I think about the return to the school, what we do at Williston is second to none. We provide the holistic education and that stability, emotional, intellectual growth, athletic opportunities, extracurricular opportunities that we're quite certain our kids are craving for. Your children, I'm sure, have done wonderfully in the virtual realm, but what they miss is being here and having the interactions and developing the relationships with teachers and faculty and coaches and really all of those important people in their lives. That continuity is critical. And as maybe not everybody knows, both of my children, Catherine and our daughter and our son, graduated from Williston. So I really know firsthand as a parent how important those relationships are for both of our children that continue this day. You know, my son from college is still reaching out to his Williston teachers, and that's something that develops, you know, by virtue of being here. Finally, I guess I would say that along these lines of one size does not fit everyone. I would urge folks to not be overcome by the mass national press and all that news. Focus a little bit on Western Massachusetts and take a look at our local news. We have I think Ms. Pickrell said this earlier tonight, you know, we have the great advantage of being this rural setting and we're not a dense area of the state, and we have a very low case right now. One can go online and see this in the CDC sites of COVID-19. So it's a great area to be in. Much of the news that you might have heard about in Massachusetts is on the eastern side of the state, couple or 3 hours away. I'm not trying to denigrate that side of the state, but that's just the facts as we know them. So, you know, I see this moment that folks are wrestling with. I'm sure Plan A, Plan B. Williston will absolutely be a safe option, and we will care for your children as we always do. And they will, despite social distancing, despite wearing a mask, I see those as pay for being back on campus, having us all together, and being able to carry out the mission of the school. And so I hope that this webinar tonight has helped answer some of those concerns that you might have. I would reiterate to all of you to reach out to any of us on the panel or any of those names that you saw of the 5 working teams, and we'll get back to you with as much information as we can. And what I can assure you is that all the decisions we make will be in the best interest of the children that we educate and in furthering their education. And so whether that's a change in the calendar or whether those are some restrictions that for 1 year seem to be a little difficult to bear, they will all be done in the service of the students here and giving them the best education they can possibly get. So with that, I think I'll say thank you. It's been a wonderful chance to share with you in person as best we can here on Zoom. And I want to thank my colleagues for joining tonight and thank all of you who participated. So thanks very much.